right. We are having a great night tonight. We're going to talk to MaliVai Washington, who was allowing me to call him Mal Washington, probably because many people have messed up his first name for years, but I got MaliVai. I have confirmed that, but I'll call you Mal. Mal, first of all, on behalf of Florida Tennis and the Bleacher Brothers Sports Network, thank you so much for joining us. And how are you doing tonight, sir?
I'm doing wonderful. Thank you for having me on. Thank you for inviting me to talk to you, Adam. Really appreciate it. And thank you for saying my name right. I've only heard, I think it's last count, 481 different versions of my first name, including still to this day after everything, even after the tennis career and the TV career and all that, I still get it butchered, and I just go by Mal now, which is fine.
Well, I have been privy to meet you a couple of times, a few times. You've been very nice, and I have heard the introduction have some very odd names. So I looked at it, I've studied it, MaliVai. I'm going with that, and thank you, Mal, for being here again. Um, just for some quick background, former ATP professional, current philanthropist, if I've said that correctly, amongst other hats. But I thought I would do the just a quick intro using your own Instagram profile, what you've said about yourself. You listed father, husband, Wimbledon finalist, USA 1996 Olympian, public speaker, real estate investor, financial educator, philanthropist, and then there was a reference to the MaliVai Washington Youth Foundation, which is absolutely a perfect segue for me because I've already had a chance to congratulate the great and wonderful Terry Florio in person at the USTA annual meeting, and her son Cameron Neal, who I should also mention is a multiple award winner. I don't know even know how many awards, and I want to share this photo of them from
Yeah.
the meeting. Um, and just a wonderful person. But so let me just say what you won, what the foundation won. It was the 2025 USTA award as the NJTL Chapter of the Year. And for those wondering, NJTL stands for the National Junior Tennis and Learning. It was awarded, as I said, in Carlsbad, California, at the 2025 USTA annual meeting. Ginny Ehrlich, the USTA Foundation CEO, said the following: "We are proud to honor the important work being done at the MaliVai Washington Youth Foundation. We are grateful to MaliVai and his extraordinary leadership team for their commitment to delivering programs and resources that empower young people to live their best life stories on and off the tennis court." So here's a big question. Can you please explain the development of the foundation, the origins of the foundation, the mission, and how people can get involved? And I want to paraphrase that by saying I had a great conversation recently with the one and only James Blake, who is also paying it forward a lot, as you know. And he said that tennis players tend to live in a bubble that just focuses on their results. So it's amazing to me that people like you and James have gotten outside that bubble. So can you say how you got outside the bubble and talk about the foundation? Thank you.
No, well, that's a great question, and I could probably go on for about an hour. You don't even have to say anything else. You can go
Okay.
get coffee if you
Perfect.
want,
Perfect.
and I can just go on and on. But
Good.
the origins of the foundation actually goes back to 1994 with me and my dad. This was before we started programs in Jacksonville, before Terry Florio became our executive director, and it was just a way. My dad was traveling with me on the tour, and fairly often people would come up to him and said, "Hey, do you think Mal would be interested in coming talking to, some of our kids?" And my dad said, "You know what? Maybe we should start a little organization, start a foundation." And we started a foundation. I was the funder. I was the only funder at the time, and we would write little grants, and this, $500 grants, and it might be just a way that someone could buy a couple of tennis balls and a couple of tennis rackets. There was no programming in place. There was no grant application in place. And that's really all we were until I was having this conversation in the early days of email. I was having a conversation with a friend of mine, Terry Florio, and I was in Paris. and she was stateside. And I said, I have this organization. Me and my dad started it. We don't have any programming. Do you have any ideas of maybe what we could do? I'd love to do something with tennis and kids in Jacksonville, Florida. I was living in Northeast Florida and still do right now. And this goes back to fall 1996. Okay.
Sure.
And literally within 24, no, not even 24, within 12 hours, under my hotel room door, there was an 8-page fax from Terry. I wish I still had it, saying, "Well, this is what we do in Atlanta," and she was the tournament director of the AT&T Challenge in Atlanta, and we partnered with the Boys and Girls Clubs, and you could do this in Jacksonville. And I'm in the middle of my career. I had just been in the finals of Wimbledon, and I says, "Okay, great. How do we do it?" Because that wasn't my expertise. And from that conversation via early days of email on AOL of all things,
Sure.
to that fax, within 12 months, we were actually having our first annual charity event for my youth foundation. And it was bittersweet in some ways because that conversation with Terry was in the fall of 1996. February 1997, I am representing the United States in Davis Cup in
Wow.
Brazil. Okay. I injured my knee in that Davis Cup tie against some guy, I think his name was Gustavo Kirten, okay, who goes on and wins Roland Garros for
Sure.
the first of 3 times just a few months later. But I injured my knee, played a couple more tournaments, and I was off for the better part of 1997. But the blessing for the foundation was, and I often say my notoriety was about as big as it ever was. This was a few months removed from playing in the Olympics and being in the Wimbledon final. So in Jacksonville, when we would reach out to people at corporations, hey, and I said, hey, it's Mal Washington, would love to come in and talk to you. They would say, oh, Mal Washington, oh, hey, love to, watch your tennis, love to hear what you're trying to
Sure.
do community, congratulations on the Olympics and things like that. So it was pretty easy to get in to see people. And that was the beginnings of the foundation. I only went to about 150 meetings that summer, telling everyone who wanted to listen
Sure.
what we were trying to do. We partnered with the Boys and Girls Club of Northeast Florida just to create a little tennis program. And then we were having, and this was September 1997, we were having our first charity event, and Andre Agassi came to it, and Chris Evert came to it, and Todd Martin came to that first event. And subsequently, Jim Courier has been to a bunch of our events. So I've had a lot of support from the men and women on tour. And that was the beginnings of the foundation. We were just a tennis program, and pretty soon we realized we need to start doing more than just tennis. And so we added an education program and called it TNT, Tennis and Tutoring. And then we decided, well, this partnership with the Boys and Girls Club is really working out. Maybe we can even start our own after school program. And when we made that shift from a tennis program to a tennis and education and now life skills program, that was really when I think the impact of what we were doing really started being felt. Because it's great to be on a tennis court with a kid, teaching them a forehand and a backhand, which we still do today. But it's different when you can teach them something about leadership and communication skills and taking full responsibility for your school, your tennis, your career, and your life in their from their perspective. So we've done a 180 from the tennis program to a more comprehensive program right now. And Adam, believe it or not, we are now in our 29th year of programming here in Northeast Florida.
Yeah, it's extraordinary. So I've heard you talk about it, and a couple of things stood out to me. Number one, you said some of the greatest pride and accomplishments you felt is when a young man or woman goes on to college or gets a degree. And then the other great aspect of it is when you have a second generation attendee. Can you talk a little bit about both of those things?
Yeah, I can. Well, that's just an indication of how old you're getting when there's second generation kids in the program. And I love it when we have a young person, boy or girl, win a tennis tournament. But I also love it when they come to me and say, with their report card, and they say, I've gotten really good grades and I've gotten A's and B's and just one C, or they've moved their C up to a B. I
Sure.
love it when they graduate to the next grade because I, I I see the potential in so many of our students, and oftentimes, maybe because of their background, maybe because of some of their very challenging family situations, maybe it's because of what they see in their families, amongst their friends, and in their community every single day. They may not see that potential, but I see the potential. And if we can put programming in front of them that's going to help them realize that potential, to me, that is one of the greatest gifts that we can give. And then once they go on and graduate from college, or they graduate from high school or graduate from college, or go on and decide, you know what, I want to be in the world of tennis and I want to coach tennis, or I want to now go to grad school. We have students who are in college now, students who are in grad school right now, some students who actually work full time for my youth foundation. So seeing that full circle, those full circle moments are extremely gratifying to me, and really seeing second generation kids, meaning their parents were middle school students in the foundation, and now that parent is a homeowner and living their life, and they thought so much of the foundation and what we're trying to accomplish. They said, you know what, we need to live in a place, in an area, that we can get my kid, my daughter, to the foundation so now they can take advantage of these opportunities.
And the foundation is in Jacksonville, right?
Jacksonville, Florida. Yes, we've been here and this is where we're going to stay.
And people can find it online on Instagram and all those wonderful spots to get involved and to donate, right?
Yeah, absolutely. You can go to malwashington.com, malwashington.com, and absolutely, there are opportunities to volunteer. There's opportunities on our website to donate. But I often say, Adam, for anyone who's willing to donate $1 to my foundation, I will personally take you on a tour of our campus to let you see what we're doing. I believe in what we're doing so much. I've only donated every year since 1994, when my dad and I started it, and I continue to do so today. But anyone who donates $1 or donates an hour of their time, the least I can do is take you to the 32209 zip code of Jacksonville, Florida, let you see what we're doing, let you see the neighborhood, let you see the kids that we're impacting, the programs we're running, and then from there, it sells itself. I'm sitting here on a podcast with you, and I can obviously talk about it all day long. But until I walk side by side with someone in that neighborhood, and we walk into our youth center and look at the programming, then we walk across the street into our teen center and look at the programming, that's when it hit home who we're serving and what we're trying to do.
So personally, as a USTA Florida volunteer, I am thrilled, first of all, that you have the USTA Florida 2024 Hall of Fame Award over your right shoulder
Yeah,
there,
right there.
which recognizes individuals who've made a significant contribution to tennis in Florida with their impact as a player, but really with your generational impact on the community. Can you talk about the importance of having partnerships, whether it's USTA Florida or other entities, and how that all impacts the foundation?
We would not be where we are today without USTA Florida. We would not be where we are today without USTA National. I am very fortunate and blessed that those two entities, and certainly other family foundations and corporate supporters here in Jacksonville, have gotten behind us. But there's a handful of organizations that have supported us so much and for so long. We would be a completely different organization without that support, and that's certainly the case with USGA Florida. So it was very special when I was honored with this award over my right shoulder right here, because it was a complete surprise. It was the
Right.
75th anniversary of USGA Florida, and I thought it was a celebration for that. And I show up, and then I'm wondering, why are like family and friends here? What is going on? And call me dense, call me whatever, and I still didn't get it, and until I'm up on stage and it's like, oh, by the way, we're going to induct you into the Hall of Fame.
That's
So it
great.
was that was a special moment, and Dana Andrews with USTA Florida, she was who has been a friend for a long time. She awarded me this, and we had a great conversation, and it was very special having a lot of family and friends there to share in that moment.
And I know Laura Bowen, the executive director, was excited, and Chuck Gill, the president. And It's funny, you have a big fan in Don Davis, who's on the USTA Foundation, and
Yep.
you're not going to remember this because it's not a highlight of your life; it's a highlight of my life. You played tennis with Don against me, and I decided to hit a ball to you, thinking, I got a pretty good volley, and I never saw the ball again as it whizzed past me, and thought, okay, that was a mistake. I don't think I'm going to do that again. But a highlight
Oh,
for me, you don't remember it, but a highlight for me. So
well, I don't I specifically do actually remember being on the court with Don Davis because we were on
yeah, but
clay
not,
court
right.
somewhere in
Yes,
South Florida.
yes, yes.
Yeah, that was 20 years ago.
It's a pro-am. It
Yeah.
was a pro-am, and you were so nice as always. But
No, I appreciate that.
again, if anyone's ever gonna just crush me and hit the ball by me, it was you, and it was an honor. All right, just a few more things before we get to your tennis career, because there's a lot to cover. But 2015, you get the NJTL Founder Service Award for your contribution since retirement to support education and tennis. What does that mean to you, getting the NJTL Founder Service Award from the USTA? Uh, that had to be significant back then.
So really what it means to me is it's an acknowledgement of all of the work that so many people have put into the foundation for over a couple of decades. And not just myself, and I get a lot of recognition, and my name is on the organization, but from my executive director, Terry Florio, to our board of directors, to our full and part-time staff, and every one of our volunteers, I get the award, my name's on something, but if collectively they do way more than I do. Okay. I do a lot with the foundation, but there's so many people have poured into the foundation. And that award was just a great acknowledgement, not for me personally, but for what we have collectively been able to do in Jacksonville for so many years. So when I get an award like that, I really call it a we. We got this award, and this is what we have been able to achieve for so many years. But that was very special as well.
So then in 2009, going back in time, you win the ATP Arthur Ashe Humanitarian of the Year award for your positive work. You can't deflect to everybody, Mal. With the MaliVai Washington Youth Foundation. What you may not know about me is I have collected a ton of tennis memorabilia over the years, and so I like to show. This is my Arthur Ashe Wheaties box right here.
Nice. I
Has
don't
a
even know if I've ever seen that.
Yeah, it has a lot of good information about him on the back here. Yeah, this is a lot of cool stuff. So yeah, so you'll have to suffer through some of the memorabilia. I apologize, but
No, that is great.
it's a
No,
fun time.
I do I remember that award, and yet when I think of Arthur and Arthur Ashe, and I've had a couple of opportunities to meet him. One at the University of Michigan, and then
Wow,
yeah, well, I have an interesting story about that because on one of the walls in my youth foundation, we have take advantage of your advantage. And what that means to our kids is everything that we have to offer, from the trips to the US Tennis Open, to the Jaguar games, to the scholarship opportunities and the mentoring. This is your advantage. Take advantage of it. This is an advantage that thousands of youth right here in Jacksonville do not have. And where Arthur comes into the story is I was number one in the country at University of Michigan, and Arthur was there, and he was talking to the team, and I'm talking to him face to face. We're
wow.
standing 18 inches apart. And I often say to kids, and when I tell a story, do you think at 20 years old, it ever dawned on me to say, hey, Mr. Ashe, do you think we could trade phone numbers? Do you think I could call you every once in a while just for a little piece of advice or just to talk? No, it just went right over my head. It was an advantage that was standing right in front of me that I did not take advantage of. And yeah, did my life and my tennis career take off and end up okay? Sure. But just imagine if Arthur Ashe was your mentor or
Wow.
Arthur Ashe was your advisor. Do you think that would put maybe your life on a little different path, a little bit better path? And I tell that story because that was an advantage that I didn't take advantage of, but it was staring me right in the face. And to our students, we have so many opportunities and mentors and sponsors and trips available to you, but you have to be willing to do your part and get out of your comfort zone. So that award was special because if there was anyone who was selfless and gave to the world, it was Arthur Ashe. And to be able to get an award with his name on it, that is special. But to paraphrase something he said in one of his books, if he's remembered as a tennis player, he did not do his job here on earth. Okay. And so I think there was a point where I realized that, yeah, most people don't remember I hit a tennis ball. Okay. In the moment when I'm on the court and there's 10,000 people watching, yeah, that's a cool moment. They're pulling for me, they're pulling against me. But a few days, weeks, months, years later, it's just a nice memory. And yeah, it was a nice impact and memory for me personally. But did it really impact people? In that moment, it was fun, but long term, did it impact people? Maybe not so much. But with my youth foundation and everything we're trying to do, that has an impact well beyond the tennis court that will literally impact generations. So that's what I took from Arthur's words, that I don't want to be remembered necessarily as a tennis player, but what kind of impact was I able to have on someone's life? And if you just think about that term, an impact on a life, you take a little infant. That infant is 100%, my daughter, my son, when they were little, they were 100% relying on me and my wife. Okay, that's an impact on a life. And in a little different way, but very similar to whether it's the kindergartner in my youth foundation or the senior who's about to graduate, you can have that type of impact when there's that consistent programming year after year after year that they're taking advantage of.
That seems to be a very consistent theme in your life because I actually watched today some of your Instagram videos where you talked
Mm.
about real estate and finances. It was very interesting because when you picture someone's going to start talking and they're a realtor, you have a realty company, you think they're going to talk about how, you can contact me and I can help you. But it wasn't like that at all. It was about how a person can uplift themselves through understanding finances. I remember a specific discussion about a woman saying she had to keep a credit card balance on, and you explain, and that was brutal. And then another one about how someone had sold a property for 260,000, but it was worth 350, but they hadn't done the legwork. But really the whole theme of it was, you have to change your life, but you have to make those changes, and it's not going to happen because you want it to. You have to make it so. It was really actually fascinating stuff today.
Well, Adam, what's kind of interesting is we live in a digital world and we all have phones and we all spend time on our phones. And what I find with a lot of people and is especially teenagers, but also young adults, we spend a crazy amount of time on our phones, Instagram, TikTok, maybe Xbox, playing video games, Snapchat, whatever your favorite app is. And I often call it cheap entertainment. It's fun. I don't know how much I got out of it or how much it helped me to professionally or personally grow and develop. Um, but I try to get people to make a little mental shift. Everyone wants to come up financially. Everyone wants to do well. Everyone wants to be successful. But if you're spending a large percentage of your time scrolling on social media, I feel very confident that that is not the road to success. And when you turn 20, 30, 40 years old, no one's going to say, man, I really wish I'd spent more time scrolling back when I was in my 20s and teens. It's actually going to be just the opposite. I really wish I had committed to personal development and growing my leadership skills and growing my communication skills. I really wish I had committed to, and this is one I've heard from literally people in their mid 50s when we're talking around financial education and financial literacy. They say, I wish I had learned this in my 20s. Okay. And here they are in their 50s, still trying to get some of the basics. And, and the reality is this, in the fast-paced world that we live in, if you don't have a solid foundation of financial knowledge, I don't know how you get ahead. I don't know how you come up financially. And because it certainly making a lot of money helps, but we've seen plenty of stories of people who made a boatload of money and squandered it. And Adam, here's where I think we're going to see some crazy stories in the coming years with NIL student athletes making a ton of money and they're for whatever reason they don't go to the league. Injury, they're just not good enough. They rest on their laurels and say, "Hey, I'm a millionaire and I don't need to go to the next level." And then by the time they're 25, they're going to be back financially to where they were at 18, 19, 20 years old. It's going to happen if it hasn't happened already.
Well, I'm hoping some of them reach out to you, Mel. The
Well,
same way it would have been nice if you reached out to Arthur Ashe and maybe somebody who sees this or sees something else and says, I think I need to talk to that gentleman. I hope that
but
happens.
here's the crazy thing is there's the information is readily available and for free.
Sure.
So instead of scrolling Instagram, how about you scroll and find something that's going to actually, grow your knowledge and put you in a better position. But what do I know?
A lot, actually, from what I can tell. But if this was a TV show, Mel, this would be the time where things get a little bit wavy and we go back in time. Okay. Going to talk a little tennis.
Yep.
Your singles record, we're going to go start there. You were 254 and 184. These are just going to run through some things. Career, is that incorrect? So
No,
you
no,
can,
that
oh,
sounds correct. And my mind immediately went to about three losses that I had in my career, which would have completely changed the trajectory of my career.
do you want to talk about those right off? You
I-
hit it if you want to. Go ahead.
yeah. I mean,
Go for it.
there's three matches that I actually four. Of course, the Wimbledon final. You lose in the final, you win Wimbledon. Yeah, your life's completely different.
Sure.
So that was a big one.
Well,
That
before you go on, let's break it down because I was going to get to it later. But if you don't mind, you mind talking about it a little bit?
No, no, go ahead.
All right, it's 96. It's
Yeah.
Krychek, Richard Krychek, and you have an unbelievable run. In fact, what as a great athlete, what you don't even think about is this ridiculous win you had in the semis over your friend Todd Martin. You're down, I think, 5-1 in the fifth. A match you should not win, a match that probably has kept Todd up for the rest of his life, even though he's your buddy. And I know you couldn't talk about it until he mentioned it when you were in a golf cart. I think I read that somewhere. But
Correct.
but that's not the match you remember. But think about that's an unbelievable victory, no? To get
I think
to face
it was, and I figure over the course of a career, or actually over the course of a season in tennis, you're going to win some matches that you probably should have lost. But of course, in your head, you're like, well, I was supposed to win that match. And then you're going to lose some matches that you probably should have won. And then over the course of a year or a career, it probably evens out. And why did it happen that way? I'm not sure. I was down 5-1 and I win it in five sets, but lose to Richard Krajicek in the final, who was just better that day. That is one question I do want to ask God one day. There's you've let a few players win, double digit majors.
yeah.
How about you just throw, me a bone and just let me get one? Okay.
I think
And
there's a
I'm a little afraid of what his answer is going to be. So I might not even ask that question, but certainly that was a big one. And then losing in the finals of a couple of the ATP 1000 tournaments. One back then it was called the Lipton down in South
sure,
Florida.
sure.
Losing in the final to Pete Sampras, that was a big loss. Losing in Essen, Germany in the final to Thomas Muster. That was a big one. And then one that just kind of bugs me was losing in the quarterfinals of the Olympics, and to a buddy of mine, Sergi Bruguera from Spain, great player, but losing. He went on to get the silver, losing to Agassi in the gold medal round, and losing to him just yeah, just bugs me because we were in Atlanta in front of an American crowd. I lose to him
Sure.
in sets. Just a big moment, big occasion. So yeah, there's a handful of matches. If you win them, it changes your career. But if there's a few, if you lose them, it also changes your career.
It is fascinating to speak with great athletes like yourself. You're all wired a little bit differently than the rest of us, and you
Some
all,
of them are really wired a little bit off, I'd say.
but it is amazing because you do remember the losses more than the wins, and I mean you had some unbelievable wins. I mean in 1990, um, you're ranked 103. You beat Lendl, who's ranked number two.
Mhm.
1992, your breakthrough year, you win the Memphis title, you beat Wayne Ferreira. The men's clay courts that year, you beat Claudio Mazzadri, and you end up with a career high ranking of 11 that year. In 93, yeah, you had that tough loss to Sampras in Miami, but it is Pete Sampras. Okay, a few people had a few tough losses. I mean, you didn't lose, Sampras. That's kind of rough. In '94, you reached your first Grand Slam quarterfinal in Australia. You beat Steek, and you beat not a lot of people beat Vilander in a five setter. I mean,
Yep.
do you remember that match at all?
I do. I do remember that well. Here's the thing about some of those statistics.
Sure, sure.
Some of those wins I had, they were often at smaller tournaments. I need some of those bigger wins at at the majors, like
Eh,
deep into the second week.
sure.
I think beating Mats, one of the greats who I looked up to. I remember watching him in the finals of the Aussie Open back in 1988. That might have been the first time it was in Melbourne, and watching him in the final. And I'm in college, so fast forward a bunch of years, and then I'm like, holy crap, I'm playing Mats Wilander, the great Mats. So moments like that are the special ones. So yes, you do remember the losses, but certainly you remember the big wins as well. You mentioned Michael Stich. That was 94 Aussie Open, maybe second, maybe first round.
Yes.
And he was ranked two in the world or something like that. So that was a pretty special win. And then I went on to the quarterfinals, losing to Todd Martin. But yeah, those are special moments. They're special for me, but no one else remembers them.
Yeah, I mean, your career, you've beaten Lendl, Gilbert, even Yusevic, Steek, Chang, Edberg, Bersategi, Agassi in Essen. I think he was number one at the time.
He was up there, but that was in '96, and that was kind of right before he took that tumble to 140 in the world.
Well,
But
I'm showing number five when I think I'm showing 1995. Is that incorrect?
95, you're right, 1995.
When
That's
he
the
was
third
number
one.
one. So
Okay.
I think you're selling yourself a little short here. I mean,
Well,
it's pretty,
here's what's funny
yeah.
about that match with Andre.
Yeah, tell me about that. I'm fascinated.
If I'm playing my best and he's playing anywhere near his best, he's going to beat me. I mean, head to head, he was just a better player. His game set up really, really well for him, or my game set up really, really well for him and what he was able to do on the court. But that particular day, and I lose the first set 6-4. And against a guy like that, you just felt like you just got to hang around. And if you can kind of get under his skin somehow, he'd get a little frustrated at times and kind of let you back in the match. And it wasn't anything I did. His shoe like tore apart, literally tore apart. Okay. And he fixated on the shoe. Okay. And then, like, I can't remember who he's with, but someone like goes back to the locker room and brings him another pair of shoes. And then he's ticked off. And then I beat him like 1-1. like after that because he got fixated on his shoe. But like Andre is one of those guys who you love to play because you knew, or I felt like if I could somehow get under his skin, maybe I could eke out a win. But either way, you knew it was going to be a battle because he's one of the greats. And I'm not just saying that because he's done a bunch for my youth foundation. He was one of the greats, and you love
Sure.
to play those players that are, one, two, top five in the world, top 10 in the world.
And your best results were generally on carpet or hard court,
Indoors, hard court, sure.
indoors. But yet this jumped out at me. You beat uh, Alberto Bersategui. He's number 8 on clay in Rome.
In
You know,
Rome, yeah.
and
Yeah,
what do you
that
remember?
was,
How did that happen?
you know what?
Don't tell me his shoe exploded.
No shoe exploded. It was one of those things where on any surface, I felt like I could compete really, really well against anyone. With my serve, with my speed, just with my ground strokes. Bersategi, probably better clay court results than me, but I could go out there with a game plan, and I had a lot of confidence in my own ability. And I knew if I played towards the top end of my game, no matter who I was going to play, they were going to have to play good to beat me. Now, there are times I was out there and I'm beating myself. But if I could play toward, especially, with my serve and my return to serve, if I could play towards the top of my game, I felt like other players knew they were going to have to bring it that day. So I do remember that match against Bersategi.
It's a very interesting result. And going back in time a little further, you were from a tennis playing family in terms of the fact that your I want to make sure I get this right. Who in your family was playing, but it was
Everyone.
everyone. Yeah, it was very interesting. Your younger sister Mashona was a former top 50. Younger brother Mashiska
Shishka. Yep.
Shishka, Michigan State University. Your older sister, Kayla, played professionally. Um, Amazing. Like, how did that family become such a great tennis playing family?
I often say that I hit the lottery multiple times. Okay. And the first lottery I hit was being born to two college educated parents who grew up in the deep South who were just willing to grind and work their tails off. So that was the first lottery ticket that I won. The second one is they instilled in me a work ethic and in all of us a work ethic. And it didn't matter what it was, if you were willing to put in the time, you could achieve. So, yes, my older sister, Makila, got top 100 back in the 1980s on the WTA Tour. And my brother, who you mentioned, was probably top 250s-ish in the mid 1990s. And then you mentioned Mashona. And what's funny about that is we all have bragging rights. And then I have another sister, Masanja, who also played junior tennis. But we all have bragging rights for something. And everyone in my family, except for me, won the Flint, Michigan Junior Open.
That's awesome.
How and why I could never win it, I don't know. But one of my siblings who never even played past junior tennis won it, but I didn't. But then as my career went along, I got a couple of stats that I could pull rank and
Oh
say,
yeah.
well, I played the Olympics and I was in the finals of Wimbledon.
And in college, you go to the University of Michigan for a couple of years, a top ranked college player. But interestingly, if I saw this correctly, you actually went to school beyond that and got your degree, not from there necessarily, but I think it was a Florida school. But you said it was just you were the older guy in the class who's actually paying attention. And I thought that was pretty cool, like that you went back and did that. Like
I,
that's just so you.
Yeah, I did. I retired from my tennis career in 1999 and eventually went back to the University of North Florida and got my a finance degree from North Florida in 2010. And in the digital age, in the age of phones, yes, I'm looking around watching all these kids just fiddle on their phones, or a guy opens up his laptop and he has, the ESPN app or the site up, and he's reacting in the middle of class to ESPN. And I'm like the guy sitting in the front who's the older guy sitting in the front paying attention, which was the opposite of what I did when I was at University of Michigan. I was 18 years old, not appreciating what I had in a full scholarship to the University of Michigan. I thought I was there to play tennis. I was actually there to play tennis and get an education. And I think I mentioned earlier, I wasn't taking advantage of that advantage that I had in my hands right then. But with that said, it did turn out.
Well, interesting stuff. I will tell you, I got to take a quick break to show you, just as I said, I got some Mal Washington memorabilia here, so bear with
Okay.
me. I know. We start with the wild card. Okay. I don't know if you've seen all these cards or not. Uh,
I've seen that one.
okay.
That was the second version. There was another version prior to that in like
Okay.
probably 1990 or 1991, but
Uh,
the ATP had those player cards.
yeah. So, and then there's the there's this card here.
Oh, there we go.
Hopefully you've seen them all. Hopefully you've seen these.
Yeah.
Love this. Um, then there's the Net Pro. Okay. Sure you've seen that.
Uh,
And then
yeah, that was
there's
the old Rossignol tennis racket and clothes. That was the first deal, like marketing deal that I had. Rossignol, who was known for skis of all things,
sure.
but they had tennis rackets, and I had these Rossignol clothes on, thinking I'm the man because I had signed like a little deal.
It's
But
great.
here's a problem with them. You wash them once, and those things would shrink up like crazy. Okay, and I was not known for small glutes and small thighs.
Oh, that's funny.
Okay, so but it was what it was. It's what I had, and I was out on the professional tour playing tennis.
Love it. And this is the signed version. So if you should be nice enough to, if you're lucky to meet Mal, he may sign this for you.
Yeah,
I
and
was
that's
lucky.
worth at least right now. It's worth at least a nickel,
It's priceless
5 cents, maybe 10 cents right now.
priceless to me. But there are two very special cards here. I'm gonna start with. I'm gonna go with. Well, let me start with this one. This is the Mal Washington Sports Illustrated for Kids card. Now, each one of these cards has a trivia question.
Okay.
And yours is a lot easier than Mary Jo's because I had Mary Jo on and I read her whole history and then it said, how many inches tall is Mary Jo? And she really puzzled over this. For some reason, she like, well, at that time I was this height. So you have a much easier question, but it says, I'll just read the card real quick.
Okay.
In 1992, MaliVai, and it actually has the phonetic spelling of your name, believe it or
Okay.
not, which I think is very nice. MaliVai jumped from 49th in the world to 11th, his highest ranking ever on the men's pro tour. He won two tournaments and played in 8 finals. Only top-rated Jim Courier played in more finals! Exclamation point. At the University of Michigan, MaliVai was a two-time All-American. Who is the only African American man to win the tennis U.S. Open? Is the
Oh,
trivia question. I mean, that's
oh,
pretty
that's
easy.
easy.
Yeah,
Arthur, of course.
of course, but it's a lot easier than how tall in inches is MaliVai Washington. Because one kid is looking at that going, I know Mary Jo's about 5'10". I don't think
That's
any
funny.
kid's doing that. But I saved the best for last. This is my favorite
There's
Mal
more.
Washington. There's one more card. This is the Mal Washington emotion card. Have you seen this?
I have seen that,
Okay,
and let me
it's
see. Based
it's
based on that outfit, that's probably 1996, probably.
well, what's great
Looking at that
about
shirt.
yeah, what's great about this card is it has you kind of holding your head and it says MaliVai Washington emotion frustration. And the back of the card is the classic. It says, "Ouch, where did I go wrong?" I'm not making this up. It's the back of the
I don't
card.
remember that part of the. I've
Yeah,
seen that
it
card,
says
but I don't
it's
remember
yeah,
that.
this is the back. It says, "Ouch, where did I go wrong? Some days nothing seems to go your way." MaliVai Washington has frustration written all over his face as he walks back to make amends for that last point. Have no fear. A player of Washington's caliber won't let any setback get him down for long.
I wonder who comes up with
I
that.
don't know if it's the same guy who writes the fortune cookies. I have no idea, but I thought that was so. That's my favorite card. And as we kind of wrap things up. Mal, you've been a really a really good sport. Thank you for putting up with the cards. But we've
No,
talked.
I appreciate you showing those.
Oh,
Those I've seen some of those in a while.
it's my pleasure. We've talked about your foundation, but a little bit more about your company, Diamond Life Realty. And again, very interesting. So a little bit of the when, where, and why of Diamond Life Realty and what you're doing with that.
Well, I have had a love of real estate in the same way I've had a love of tennis for since I was before I was a teenager, and I've just always been fascinated with real estate. And it really comes from my parents and my grandparents. And my parents owned the house I grew up in. My grandparents owned the house that my parents grew up in. So I had a frame of mind that, well, you get old enough, you're supposed to buy real estate. That's what you're supposed to do. And for me, it was just the coolest thing in the world when I bought my first house. And then when I actually bought my first investment. And it was just a little rental property. And I remember selling it a few years later and I made money and I'm thinking, that's it? That's all real estate is. You buy something, put a little money into it, put a tenant in place. Granted, on that deal, I made every mistake there was to be made.
Sure.
But it really grew my love of real estate. I've been in the real estate business in some capacity for over 25 years. I've had my real estate license here in Florida for I think it's maybe 27 years or something like that. But I've been an investor full time for now 10 years, but investing in some capacity for a quarter century. And as I tell so many of our students at the foundation, real estate is the greatest wealth builder there is. And so many of our students come from a background where their families have not participated in real estate ownership, and they have missed out on that. And so if I can plant that seed in the same way it was planted in my mind when I was a kid, the value of real estate and ownership, I want to plant that seed with every single kid that comes through my foundation or I come into contact with. So the company, the name Diamond Life, that's a play on words. I had my kids. I'm a big fan of the great Sade, the singer, and she had one of maybe arguably the best album of all time, Diamond Life album. And then I said to my kids, I was like, I want to come up with a name that's kind of cool and I want to have like, a precious stone in the name. And they said Diamond. And I'm like, oh, Diamond Life, there it is. So that's where that came from, and it stuck. I've been happy with it, and I love the business. Absolutely love the business.
I'm curious about the young people that you're dealing with. They see the Williams sisters and Ben Shelton and our cover story, which I'm going to ask you about a little bit, Madison Keys and the incredible, maybe the story of 2025. I mean, this has got to be the most inspirational story. I spoke to
Great
James Blake
story.
about it, and but I'm not. Do you think they recognize kind of what it was like for you, for Arthur, for Althea, or or is it just not something they think about, or do you think it's important that they recognize it? I mean, I know Althea wasn't had some issues because she wasn't a spokesperson for the issues, whereas Arthur, that was his platform. Um, and I'm curious about your whole take on your legacy and what kids think about things.
Well, I definitely don't think I should be necessarily put in the same category as Arthur and Althea, because what they went through and the climate of our country in the 50s, 60s, 70s, completely different than what I went through throughout let's say starting in the 1970s, 80s, 90s. So that's not even, it's not even comparison. So to show how great of champions that they were with all of the angst in the country, with all of the racism in the country, and to then walk out onto the court and be able to perform at a high level. It took every ounce of ability, physically, mentally, and emotionally, for me to get to one Grand Slam final, let alone win multiple majors that Althea did and Arthur did. So I can appreciate that now that I'm older. And so for the kids in my youth foundation, it's when you're a teenager, you're thinking about tomorrow. Okay. And
Sure.
you're thinking about the, if you're a guy, you're thinking about the girl who you were too nervous to ask out, 2 hours ago. There's not a whole lot of higher level thinking. They call that the prefrontal cortex, the
Sure.
prefrontal lobe.
Sure.
Um, there's not a lot of higher level thinking with a lot of teenagers. But as they get older, and I've had these discussions with some of our former students who are now in their 30s, married with kids. They get older and they realize the value of what the foundation brought. And they realize, and this is where I hope that they'll continue to realize that you have a role to play in your family, in your community. It's not just how can I make money and have fun tomorrow and spend the money this weekend. And it's hard to think that way when you're in your 20s. But as you get older, you realize you have a responsibility to your certainly to your family, but to your community. And as I see it, we all have a responsibility for those who came before us. I Here's how I put it, Adam. I want and I have a picture of my great great grandfather on my phone. Okay, and he was born a slave. Okay, we don't know when he died, but I have him on my phone, and I want him to be up in heaven bragging about me. Okay. And what I mean by that is I want him to look down and say, holy crap, that's my great great grandson right there. Um, it's my duty to make my parents proud. It's my obligation to make my ancestors proud and to knowing where they came from. My parents were born in 1938 and 1939 in the deep south of Mississippi. Okay. I never picked cotton. Okay. They only told me 1,000 times that they picked cotton. Okay. So to think
Sure.
that knowing what they went through, it's my duty to do what I'm doing. It's not that's what I'm supposed to do. Okay. And I'm supposed to help um, my community, the black community, the white community, the Hispanic community. For me, it's kids. I don't care who the community is. I just want to help kids and help them realize their potential and as much as I can. That is my goal. That is my duty. Just really as a citizen of the community.
Now, I don't think there's a better way to end the interview than those words. This has been amazing. Um, just getting to talk to you. You're inspirational. I can see why you're a public speaker in demand. I mean, you're inspirational, thoughtful,
I
tremendous.
appreciate that.
So thank you so very much for from Florida Tennis and from the Beach Brothers Sports Network. It's been an absolute honor and a pleasure to talk to you, Mal.
Well, I
Thank
want
you.
to say thank you for everything that you're doing. Thank you for having me on this Florida Tennis podcast. Appreciate the opportunity to share, and you made me laugh. Some of those cards were pretty darn funny.
Thanks, Mel. It's been a pleasure. Thank you
I
so much,
appreciate
and
that.
have a great rest of the night. Thanks.
You too.
Take care.